Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is probably my first major talk I've ever given, so it's a little unnerving, but I think it'll be fun. I think it's 40 minutes for the talk, and then we have a Q&A section for 20 minutes after. Yeah, so we can get into it. So crafting impactful dashboards for your clients. Before we get into kind of the meat of the talk, I just want to one sec. Okay, we're good. I just want to give a little bit of background. Very briefly, as I was introduced, I'm the CTO of Zyphr Solutions. Basically, I've been in the data visualization dashboard space for about maybe 6-7 years, kind of starting immediately after graduation. I entered a company based in Canada. It's called Plotly. They do, I don't know if anyone's heard of it or uses it, but they have dashboarding solutions for various languages, Python being the one that I was in. And I did a lot of work there, basically starting out when they were very small, maybe 40, 50 people, creating some of their first data visualizations, Gantt charts, splums, things like that. And now, basically since 2020, I've been doing that stuff kind of full time on my own, working across multiple industries, crafting dashboards that clients already have, or starting from the ground up in a few sectors: renewables, biotech, healthcare, hydro, I think as well. It's kind of the beautiful thing about this, and as we'll soon see in these coming slides, that this is a very multi-industrial thing, and that's why it's very beneficial in that many people can relate to it and have takeaways from basically dashboarding and data viz in general. But that's just me. A sample of some of the work I've done. This is a dashboard that it's finished, but I think I'm going to continue to work on it. It is for a client in the biotech space. They're called General Metabolics, if anyone's interested. And this is another one. This is for a client in the wind and solar space. And yeah, again, this is an ongoing thing. I kind of started working on it, but very different sectors, very different material. Before we start, I'm not going to go all the way back to the history and the origins of everything, but it's probably a good idea to start with, okay, what are we talking about? What does the term mean? What is a dashboard? It originates, I looked this up recently, it originates, I think, with horse and buggy, putting a protective screen basically between the horse and the driver so as to not let dirt fly up. And it was a way of protecting against dashes of dirt that would fly in. But obviously, when we think about it more, the more recent kind of tracing goes back to the car. And what does the dashboard within a car do? It is basically a means of indicating things to you. Gauging, so how much fuel do I have? What is my speed? Things like that. What's the health? And that is also what a dashboard was when it moved into the digital space as well, as it did in the 70s and 80s. They were mostly for monitoring issues, but then eventually it would become more interactive and it would become more portable as we moved into a more digital world with the internet and with faster speeds. Now we're in a situation, as maybe some of you can relate to this, where they're more seen as analytical tools and things that you can actually engage with and interact with. That's one way to put it. Another way to talk about it is we are using these tools, these virtual tools, as a way of bridging the gap between, as it says, domain-specific knowledge and a specific audience. So the way it is, you have all these sectors, you have different places where people do their research, like the institute we're in now. people are very close to their data, and often we want to understand it and have kind of a translation and a way of interacting with it. So depending on the audience, there are multiple ways to go about it, but you take said data, you transform it in some way, you represent it in another way, and you make that accessible. So that's kind of the basics there. But then, I don't know if anyone's thinking this, but maybe it's a little unclear. Okay, sure, I understand. We're talking about these basic interfaces and they're already out there. Why do I need to learn more about this? Like, who cares about making an effective dashboard? And what does that even mean? And of course, you don't need to do anything. You can, extend this to multiple things. But I would say that when we're talking about interfaces and when we're talking about the display of data in general, the valuable currency, the thing that we care about, is the attention of the user, of the audience. And this is the currency. And if attention and the thing we look at is the thing that's valuable, that kind of drives the whole thing, then it doesn't just matter the components of your user interface, your drop downs, your buttons, your titles, your charts. These are important as well, but also their placement matters, how they relate to each other, where they're positioned on the page, as we'll soon see. We'll go into an example. These things matter more. And it goes even deeper. It goes into the color space. It goes into typography, the type of font you use. It goes into what is it like? What does your application look like on different screen sizes? These are all, maybe they seem nitpicky or small, but of course, the representation of the stuff is valuable, and it touches many people, because people consume data and this kind of stuff in multiple ways. So I don't know, I hope I've motivated the topic a little bit. There's obviously more to say on it, but you get into very deep research and that kind of stuff, but this is more a little bit high level. Okay, so we've maybe sufficiently motivated the topic, generally what we're trying to do. Let's start with the process. So this is in thinking about this talk in the past few days, I wanted to think about, okay, how do I approach this daily? I have a couple clients now, and I do this on the daily. Specifically, it's the design portion and it's the development or the coding portion that I do, if I didn't say already. And there is a process to this. There's a kind of flow. And in thinking about it, I came up with this little schematic, as you can see. And yeah, I want to walk through it. So the very beginning, the very first stage, at any point, is you want to capture the business requirements. So, okay, what does this mean? You have your client, you have your audience, you have the people you care about. You need to figure out exactly what the needs are. You need to, whatever it is, you get on a call with them, you talk, it's email, text. You want to get as much specific information from them as possible. This is very important. The next step, immediately after that, once you have the core requirements, is you want to clarify them. So what does this mean? There's a couple ways to think about this, but I'll go over the couple. One thing that I mean is we want to make the requirements as specific as possible. So a requirement might be, I want to be able to visualize a correlation between two variables. That's fine. That's good. That's a starting place. But maybe the next step is to think about, okay, how can I make this more specific? I want to compare the correlation between these two variables. I want to see maybe I want to represent how significant they are. You can take steps to basically make your talking points a little bit more actionable so you can act on it and you can create something that eventually serves the final need of your client. This is one thing, but the second thing is, this is something that's a little bit more practical. You want to look at your requirements when you get them, and you want to make sure you can remove all the solutions that are implicitly, or basically take away all of the assumed solutions in the requirement. What does this mean? Let me give you an example. If one of my requirements is I want to be able to have a drop-down, and I want to have all of my, let's say we have a machine learning researcher, and they run through a bunch of data sets, and they want to present these data sets to their user so that they can select what they want and perform specific calculations, whatever they are. So one requirement coming from the user could be, I just want to do that. I want a drop-down with the file names, and I want to select them. That's fine. But if, when you clarify, you realize, okay, it's not actually about the drop-down, it's more about being able to see all of your results, to see all of your files, and to be able to pick one that serves your need. That's a little different than the very simple solution of the drop-down. And the thing is, the reason why this is important is because there might be a better way to visualize something than the way that the client says or wants. Everyone has their own way, of seeing what the final product will look like. Maybe people are used to the dashboard or to the drop-down, and that's fine. And it's okay. However you get the requirements is good. It's just up to you as the either designer, the programmer, whatever. You want to transform this into an abstract form so you can then pick the right solution. So maybe instead of the drop-down, you think, okay, it's actually better for me to pick. Maybe it's a sidebar, and you have little icons for each of your data sets. And if the size or there's a quality of each data set that matters, then you have the green ones, which are good, and you have the red ones, which are bad. And this is just an example, but the idea is that maybe there's a need for a different way to visualize it that actually serves a bigger, more necessary requirement. So again, I'm going to get more into this a little later. There'll be an example, but I just want to prime everybody with this. Okay. So then we get to the diagramming stage. Now, this is there are technical words for this in product development. It's, wireframing, and then there's, prototyping, and there's mock-ups, all this stuff. I'm ignoring these terms a little just because I want to talk about just the main thing. I don't want to confuse with, these words like this, just to get at the main point. And the main point here is that once you have your clarified requirements, then you want to start drawing things. Pen, paper. Sometimes maybe you use Figma. That's personally what I use. There's different tools where you can do it very quickly. You can get, open up a notebook of kinds and, just start doodling, making little diagrams. You can share them with your clients. You can get quick feedback. That's important as well. Have this kind of collaboration with them. And yeah, I think the main thing here, and we'll go more into this again, the main thing is you want to have some kind of visualization for yourself in a way where you can build on it, where you can compare different things, and eventually this moves us into the coding phase. So for the developers here, sure, this is a thing that you've had to do. There's many different tools available. There's you can use R Shiny, you can use Tableau, Power BI, Plotly, which is what I mostly use. There are many ways to do it, but again, for this talk, I'm going to speak kind of high level, and it doesn't matter I'm agnostic to the specific technology. But what we will be focusing on here is actually everything mostly before the coding stage. So let's get into it. Diagramming, how to diagram. Okay, so there's a couple points that I want to go over. This first one, keeping the landscape in view. Okay, I'll translate this a little. What does this mean? So I'm sure everybody has this experience. They go to a website or an app. You go in, maybe you're searching for something and you don't know where to find it. You go into a menu, it opens another one, you go to the next page, you keep hunting, and then maybe sometimes you're like, okay, where's the first page? Where am I? Maybe there's a little bit of confusion. Or maybe you go to other applications like Google Maps, and you can easily see where you are, where you're going. You can zoom out, zoom in. You always have the landscape. So this is what I mean. It's very important as a tip or something to think about. You want to know where you are. So this is GitHub. I hope people recognize the page. This is what it looks like when you basically open the sidebar. There's always a sidebar with certain menu options, and it's very convenient to always have a place where you can basically slide it open. You have your things, your options. It's like a sheet that sits on top. You find where you want to go if you're lost, and you get out and you move somewhere else. So this is good. This is I think, yes. This is kind of a funny meta thing, but this is actually what a screenshot of my talk looks like right now. This is Keynote, the application I'm using, and they also do a very good job of this as well. So you can see on the side you know where you are, you have the slide highlighted at 20, and then you see the slide very big. So this is another good example. You can flow around and you can find your way. Okay, now I'm going to pick on Python a little bit, even though I think we all love it, I hope. But this is an example that I was saying just a moment ago. So let's say you go to the Python website. You're looking for a question, you have a question, but you don't know where it is. Okay, so maybe you go to the documentation page and you say, okay, I go to the frequently asked questions. I go there. Okay, so now, so it was daytime, now it's nighttime. Okay, it's a little different. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I go to general questions. Maybe it's there. Okay, cool, I'm here now. I don't see my question. The list is long. I don't really know where to find it. So I don't know if people have a similar experience, but for me, it's a little confusing. I'm a little disoriented. I don't really know where I was from the beginning, and now I'm trying to figure it out. If you do look, though, you can see there is a little bit of context. You can find your way. It says at the very top, documentation. I don't know if you can see it. There's kind of the word documentation, and then an arrow and Python frequently asked questions, and then an arrow, and then general Python FAQ. There is a little bit of a hint to where you are, but it's still a little, it's still not the easiest thing, just because colors are changing and things like that. So to sum that up, and again, we'll talk about it again, this is a very important thing to keep in the back of your head. Always, when you're doing the diagrams, you want to ask yourself this question: if I had lost the plot, am I, from where I started, is it difficult? And that's the first point. The second kind of point that I want to make is what I say, pair related things together. Okay, so what does this mean? This is, again, There is literature and research. It's very deep, and I don't know all of it, but what I do know is that as a human, we look at patterns. We see patterns. And when we are dealing with dashboards, we see visual patterns. There are many ways to visually correlate or pair things together. So there's many chairs in this room. I see them all. They're all blue. There is a correspondence between each of the chairs and the colors. There's a strong tie between them. This happens with text. When one text thing says something and another text blurb says another, if the content is the same, then there's a pairing there. This is a very abstract point, I just want to say. This might take a little bit of time, but the idea here is you want to use this to help put things on the page when you make your dashboard. If you have things that are related to each other, one tip is to put them next to each other, to physically move them close to each other. But this is just one way of doing it. There are many ways to do it, and there's actually a vocabulary for this. This is called the visual variables. This slide actually, I didn't make the slide. This comes from a course that I took on data visualization. It's a very good one. I can, in the Q&A, I can find the name if anyone's interested. But the idea is that there's different modalities, there's different ways of expressing patterns. You can correlate things with their position, with the size, with the shape, the opacity, with the color. It's a very wide net of things to do, but to make it practical, one thing you can do is when you're planning your chart or when you're planning your layout for the dashboard, you write down some of the variables, or you write down all of your variables with the data specifically. And if you have all of these, so I should clarify. The visual variables are more tied to the actual design of a chart itself. So the scatter chart, the bar chart, we'll see something in a minute, but it's helpful to write these things down. And if you write them down, then you can pick what you want to use to visualize. I went over these, but I'll go over just again. You want fast tools that you use well. Again, I use Figma, pencil, paper. It's very easy. If you work with them, if you have a SharePoint, then maybe you want some kind of virtual document that you can both edit or something like that. Maybe even commenting, something with a commenting system is good, so you can go back and forth. It really depends. Yeah, and this is what Figma looks like. One little point, one little tip is that, clarifying, we talked about the clarification step, you can see it here. One thing to note is sometimes it's actually better to represent the requirement as a picture. I don't know if this is something that has ever happened, but sometimes instead of writing a big long sentence, it could be easier to delete that sentence and you just put it in front of you as the picture, and you consider all of that the requirements. It makes it easier. Sometimes it makes it you can communicate more easily with people rather than having to spell it out, and it actually kind of is on the path towards this flow of the diagram next and the code after. So that's one thing. I'm not going to have so much time to talk so much in detail on this one, but I just wanted to I wanted to reference this book. It's absolutely incredible. I really enjoyed it. It's by Christopher Alexander. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was basically a design theoretician, I think you say, an architect, I think a few other things. And he wrote this book, Notes on the Synthesis of Form. This is from 1964. And in it, actually, much of this talk is inspired by it, whether I know it or not, just because I read it and I loved it. He gives basically a process for design. And one of the things he talks about in this process of design is this idea of creating diagrams piecemeal. What does this mean? This means you have your dashboard, you can focus on one area, clean it up, put it here. Maybe you take two things, put it together, clean it up. Those are two diagrams. You can then combine them to make a bigger kind of big diagram and kind of continue to do it from there. So the idea is that it's something worth checking out if you're curious, because he kind of talks more about it and justifies it, but it is also a useful way to think about it, where I can focus on one thing, then I focus on the next, and then I combine those things together to kind of create the whole design, and then eventually you have the final thing. So again, this is another tool in the toolkit. And finally, you want to keep iterating. You want to keep trying new things. You always want to experiment. It's never, it's never the end. You can always go up and down the tree. You can go from a diagram can help you inspire how to clarify the requirements. You can code something and then you show it to your person and they say, I don't like it like this. And that's kind of almost a user testing kind of thing. So then you go back to the drawing board and you do little edits. And this is fine. This is how it works. When you get new information, you get new results and better results. Okay. So let's apply all of this now to an actual example. Let's build a dashboard. Now, I want to paint the picture. Let's say, you work at a company. Your role is what we've described, and your client comes to you and they say, hey, I really like flowers. And you say, okay, cool. And then they say, I'm very interested in doing some studies on flowers. I want to understand some things about them. Okay. Specifically, I want to study the correlations between some variables in a flower. And there is just to step back for a moment, there is a popular data set. It's called the IRIS data set. It comes from the early 1900s. I don't know if you've used it. I think it's used in machine learning classification. Yeah. And this is a very popular one. It comes in SciPy, other packages like this. I want to use this data set and I want to observe the correlation between the petal width and the petal lengths. I want to explore that. So we talk, we have a session, we clarify the requirements. So we have this, we want to use the IRIS data set. As I say, we want to plot the petal width and the petal length. I want a scatter plot. And then I care about the regression line. I want to find the line of best fit, and I want to put it on the points. I also want the correlation coefficient. I want the R² value. I want to see that somewhere when I compare. I want a drop down so that I can filter the lowest, basically filtering for the lowest petal length. And then I also want to filter the highest petal length as well. So I want to explore regression lines with this filtering. And then, yeah, as I say here, I just said it, I want to be able to easily, the key word is easily compare the regressions. This is a need of the client. I want to prioritize this. And then the last thing, I want to see the full data set. I want to be able to just see it in there somewhere. This is a common thing. Higher ups, executives like to see this. Maybe they want to download it, whatever. We want it in the dashboard. Okay, so let's all try to imagine what this looks like. Visualize it. Okay, done? Good. Okay. No, so where are we going to start? Remember the diagram we started with. We've gotten the requirements, right? We capture. The next is we clarified them, and now we are going to start diagramming. So I did this in, I have a tablet, so I use this. Maybe it looks something like this. You put your drop downs, you go kind of in order, my table, my chart. I hope this makes sense. Then I start forming relationships. So I say, okay, you know, I use the red marker to say, this is going to update this thing. So the drop down will update the chart. Cool. I put my data set somewhere in here. And the data set updates the drop down, and the drop down is going to update the chart. And then, yes, lastly, of course, we want the table just to be the data set, so we have the arrow there. So this is just, yeah, I hope this is making sense. Just kind of, we're drawing things out, we're finding relationships between things. Arrows are very helpful at this, but you can use anything. Okay, and there we have it. We have, we code it up. There it is. And yeah, let's have a look at it. So here we have the filtering. I did this in Dash. So we can see we have the x-axis is being filtered as I go. So I pick 4. Goes to 4. Yeah, there's only one stream. I have my data set, the whole thing. It's very, very long, so I make it scrollable, which is just a CSS trick to overflow, or to scroll and overflow. So good, good. And then this is a Plotly chart, so it comes with the tooltip. I have on hover, I have my data. Can go through, and it even has the correlation line, so you can see there's an r squared. Yep, you see it? Shows you the r squared value, which is exactly what we wanted. We have another requirement. Good, finished. We filter, changes, now it's 0.95. So we have a way of filtering. We can see the data. Yeah, it changes 0.92. And yeah, good. Okay, I think it's over. We're done. No, almost, not quite. That could be a good place to stop. That could have been the end of the talk, but we want to do better. We want to keep going. Okay, where do we go? The first thing we notice, what could we do? Let's think. We want to keep the landscape, right? We want to keep the person aware of where they are. What if we take the x-axis and we fix it? Okay, what if we lock it? Now look at the x-axis. It doesn't move. Cool. We know what the minimum and the maximum possible value is. We're not seeing it kind of move. We have it clear and in sight. So you can see the lines kind of move, and it's a little bit, I think, easier to tell where you are. So that's cool. Okay, what else can we do? I want to focus on, what is it? I want to focus on the diagram again, where we left it. I want you to look at the requirements right now and mentally think, is there something in here that maybe is not abstract enough? Is there a requirement that maybe has a solution implied in it? Just take a second to think about it, to look through. Okay, so one of the things that you might have noticed is that we're talking about drop-downs in the requirements. But a drop-down that's one way of doing something. We care about doing a thing, and so maybe there's a better way to visualize this. Maybe there's a better way maybe we missed to clarify the requirement. Let's see. We look at the drop-downs. Okay, maybe we can put them on the side. Maybe we save space. Okay. This is maybe what it looks like, as you saw. But then you start thinking, okay, what if we put it into a mathematical equation? It's always going to be the case that the lower is less than the upper. What if we put it like more kind of on the same line? What if we put it like this? Maybe, okay, maybe this is a better solution. So again, just through diagramming, just through exploring the different representations, what do we see? We see that we can also represent it as a range slider. So this, we save space. It does the filtering exactly like we want. As you can see, everything's the same. I think I'm refreshing some of it, yes. So you can do the same filtering. And I want you to notice, there seems to be more of a correspondence now, a visual correspondence between this and this. So what did we talk about? We talked about pairing things that are related. So maybe we could move them. Maybe we can move this closer to here so that because they are related, they can be just next to each other. So let's try that. I think I go to the next one. Yes, so I talk about the requirements. We rewrite the requirements first to filtering. And now we have this. Okay, what does this look like? So I put it directly on the x-axis. And I think that seems to work even better. It's completely part of the chart. There is a little bit, you see, there's a little gap sometimes. It looks like the y-axis is kind of going up and down and it's not exactly in sync. We can fix this. So we go to the next slide. Now, okay, cool. We fixed something with coding with the y-axis. And look, it's so much easier to now see the line because we're not moving the scale. It's very easy to see the slope of the line. We can still hover over the line. So good, we're doing so much better. Good. Okay, what more do we do? One small thing is, okay, maybe because we want to easily explore the data, we are going to put it at the top and we put the table down at the bottom. So we can scroll, do the same thing as usual, and we have the chart at the top. Another thing, we add a title. Why? Because again, it's the landscape thing. We want to know where we are and what we're looking at. It's the same principle. You have this hierarchy of the top thing, which matters the most, and then you have the bottom thing, which is the table. And then the final thing I want to point to is this. Technically, we are done. We can submit to our client and we're finished and it's over. But I want to point out that we want to easily compare regression line values. We want to be able to see what that R squared is back and forth when we go between them. So how do we do that? Right now, we hover, we see it appear. Okay, we think about it, we store in our random access memory, we do a little filter, we go to the next point, we see R squared appear again. Maybe there's an easier way to always show the R squared, so we don't have to go in and remember and then go to the next and remember. So we try putting it right on the screen. So now it's in the bottom right corner, as you can see. And if I play the movie, you can see it update in real time. Now it's becoming more like an analysis tool because it's just much easier to see kind of where we are, and yeah, you don't have to do such a difficult comparison. You could put more things on there, you could put more information if you wanted. Yeah, but I guess kind of the final prompt for everyone as I conclude the talk is, what else could we improve with this one? What else could we do to optimize the user experience? And yeah, I can leave it at that, but that basically concludes the talk. So thank you. And yeah, I'm done.
Hi, thank you for the talk. Do you do this on-premise or on cloud, like Dashplotly? Do you do it?
Yes. You know about the on-premise solution?
Yeah, you can do on your computer, or depends if it's a bank or something, they can have on-premise. Like, do you deploy it on cloud or on-premise?
I've done it, well, like I typically use the open source version of Dash, where you don't need to kind of deploy it, but I do have one project actually with the wind and solar company where they do deploy it to on-premise, if that's what your question is. So I am doing that, and they I think have a few apps right now.
How do you transfer your dashboard to your clients?
Usually with them, I will just directly deploy it to a test container. They'll look at it.
So do they run it on their computer?
Yeah, they run it on their computer.
Okay, we can say it's on premise in some sense.
Is that what? Yeah. So maybe I'm confusing because I think Dash has they call it on premise, but I think I'm confusing it with their enterprise solution where they give you all these. I think I understand your question more though. They can use it, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
They use it.
Can I ask one more? Do you use anyhow ChatGPT, or can you integrate that as a prompt there to interact with ChatGPT to understand your data? Did you do something like that or no?
I haven't done so much of that. I use ChatGPT occasionally. I'm honestly not the biggest user of it, but I know that people, I think my coworker does use it to generate even quickly visualizations if we're tight on a deadline or something like this. But also I think Plotly does. I think they're starting to introduce AI generated stuff where you just put in a prompt and then it kind of puts together the data visualization very quickly. So I don't typically use it, but it seems interesting. It's like a new development. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for the talk. You were mentioning some educational resources, I guess, like some data courses for visualizations. I think that could be useful to mention. And also, can you just mention what kind of maybe packages and tools you use usually for visualizations?
For the first question, did you just want to know what the name of the course was?
You were mentioning some course that for data visualization course that you really liked. Yes.
I need to find the exact name. It's, I think the designer's name, I found it on Instagram actually, it was an ad, and then I went to, I don't know if you know Domestika. It's, it's a platform for learning, and Fredrika, I think is her name. I wish I knew it. Maybe after I can find it. I just don't want to go through my phone now, but I can give you the name of it.
And then the second question was, you were mentioning some tools. So you were mentioning Sigma and then Plotly.
SQL?
Sigma.
Figma, yes, sorry.
I've never used those kind of tools. Those are the main sources where you can basically try this visualization things.
Right. So I don't know if they're the main, but I know that Figma is a very, very popular prototyping, wireframing, mocking up tool. I would say it's probably one of the most popular ones right now. It's, if that's what your question, just generally how it's perceived and more about it. It's definitely used by some of my designer friends are mostly using that, and there's older kind of tools that they're moving away from. And this, what was the second? It was just Plotly in general you were curious about?
Yeah, can you call like those tools like from Python actually, or oh, okay.
Like
Yes.
like Plotly. So yeah, maybe I might have assumed people knew it more, but Plotly is basically has a bunch of APIs in different languages. Python is, I think, their most popular API, and you can write apps, just apps that get interpreted. That you can just deploy anywhere and just open in your browser, and they're geared mostly for like data visualization. So that's Python. With Figma, I don't know, they might have integrations now for Python thing, because it's a very community-driven thing with Figma. But I think there's a lot of kind of tools that you can connect with. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah.
Yeah.
Greetings. Thank you for the presentation. Just one clarifying question, particularly about Plotly. I have some experience working with it, but there's something that just came up on my mind. When working with, say, Tableau or Power BI, they have what's called like caching of data. So basically, they cache the data for performance, so that you don't have to hit whatever you're pulling data from every time you filter something. So I just wonder if you know if Plotly has something equivalent where you can kind of cache the data for at least some period of time, so that people using the dashboard don't have to wait, let's say, relatively longer to get their results. Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and yeah, there are caching tools right now that you can use. If you want, after the talk, I can find even the doc page, the documentation page for it. There's a couple ways to do it, I think. Mostly, there's I think like LRU memory. There's like that package. There's an example basically of using that to, just memoize the function. Yeah, maybe not exactly the same. You can set it up with, if you deploy it to Heroku or something like this, you can use Redis. There's an example where you can do it with that. I've used it. It's pretty simple, fairly easy. If you want, I can find it after. And
I was wondering if Plotly has something built in for that. I know, like workarounds. I'm familiar with workarounds that can use to achieve the same. I was wondering if there is something like a Plotly module that kind of helps with that in a straightforward manner, as opposed to having to connect a couple of tools, or depending on the deployment for caching.
As far as I know, I don't think there's like the most plug and play thing like that, but I think there's other things that are maybe similar, like there's background, you can use like background tasking. Again, it requires a little bit of, configuring with, but not to my knowledge, there's like an easy, just press a button, but it's updating constantly. So, there could be in the future.
One more small question, actually, and I don't need the microphone. There's a recent trend, depending on what recent is, but when they deploy a dashboard, they divide the semantic layer and the dataset layer separately when deploying. That helps a lot. Let's say when you want to share something with Power BI, when you push it to the cloud or whatever, you get two components. You get the semantic layer, the visuals, the explanation, blah, 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 and then you get the dataset, which then other people can use for their own dashboard. Anything similar on Plotly where you deploy, there's like some kind of a separation between, like, you build a correlation plot, right? Scatter plot.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way when you publish it, there's a separation between the actual plot and the data behind the actual plot?
I don't think there's a built-in way. I don't think there's a built-in way to to separate it into a semantic layer and a data layer, I think you would just have to write the app yourself where you just create that distinction via a tab or something like that. That's interesting though. I haven't used Tableau myself. I know about it, of course. I didn't know that was a thing that they did.
That is, it's a, well, relatively recent thing, but people just decided, hey, let's separate to probably due to some, at least there's a performance issue in there, but there are probably some other factors like reusability. For example, you just build a correlation plot with specific columns, right? And what if you did some transformations with them? And I'd like to use the same columns you used for your correlation plot with your transformations already. Now, I don't want to have to do all the transformations again from scratch. What if there was a way I could use your data set separately, the one that you have used for the columns, not the data set, the columns you used for your correlation plot?
I think observable. Do you know observable? I think they do something like that too. Again, I haven't used it so much, but I've seen their features. But yeah, no, there's a need for it you see something you like and you want to use it and use the same data. I totally see the need for it. I don't think Plotly has that capability right now. So.